If Washington's policy debates have you throwing your hands up lately, you're not alone. It's easy to feel like your voice doesn't matter, but perhaps these types of chaotic times might just be an opportunity to speak up, even when the system feels broken. See, I have an author I'd like you to meet whose memoir isn't just about overcoming. It's about transforming fear into focus, pain into purpose, and the lessons she shares are as practical as they are powerful. Stick around because you'll not only learn more about her book, you'll learn about the writing journey this author took to create it.
Welcome to A Book Finds You podcast. This week's guest is Dr. Jane West. Join us as she shares the inspiration behind her book, along with her writing process, routines, and challenges. And now here's your host, best-selling author, Rob Jolles.
Today's guest, Dr. Jane West, spent 40 years working on Capitol Hill and advocating for numerous higher education and disability organizations. This allowed her to put forward a guide to making your voice heard in the public policy arena. Her book, Advocating for the Common Good, People, Politics, Process, and Policy on Capitol Hill, parts the curtains and brings us behind the scenes with a simple framework that enables both the novice and the experienced to deftly navigate the public policy maze. This is a call to action. Now more than ever, your voice needs to be heard. Happy to have you with us and welcome to the show, Jane.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Great. Well, you probably know where I'm going. I'm wanting to hear, I don't believe we find books. I believe they find us. And so how did this particular book find you?
Well, first of all, I love the title of your show,
Thank you.
The Book Finding You, because boy, am I a great example of that. I never set out to write a book, never thought I would, was not my goal in life. And what happened is I've always been an educator, and because of my public policy experience, I wanted, and I was working with several universities. So I thought, why don't we bring these doctoral students from universities all over the country to Washington, go around, meet with members of Congress, meet with staff, meet with people from the White House, meet with people from the National Association, and let them explain to the students what they do and how they do it, etc. Because it's a mystery to people unless you're really in it. So I started this course and ran it for several years. And one morning I just woke up and this 4 Ps was in my brain. And I was frustrated because the students would love the experience, but it's sort of like drinking out of a water hose. They'd leave and have no framework for putting it together. So the book really did find me, and I am glad it did, because once it got its hooks into me, Rob, there was no turning back.
Well, that's true. That's why sometimes people ask me, they'll tell me I always want to write a book. I'm thinking about writing a book. And when I ask them, great, what's the book about? They go, well, I don't know. I just want to write a book. And it's like, it's not time. Because like you said, it gets its hooks in you. Yes. And, it's funny, I've never talked about this, but the first book I ever wrote came from a course I was teaching at Xerox. And I was teaching it over and over and over again for a couple of years, how training trainers for Xerox. And actually had a guy come in and talk about how to write a book. But I thought, I think I'm going to write a book. I think it's finding me. But it happened because I was almost rehearsed into what I was saying, kind of in a repetitive manner. And away we went. And truly, that was the easiest book I ever wrote. The others were a lot harder, but boy, you want to write a book, teach for a while, and you'll have some content.
Boy, that's true. That's so true. They say, if you really want to learn something, then teach it.
Right.
And that is so true. You learn it at a different depth, at a different level, at a different way. And it's really true.
Yeah. I actually, I taught a lot of sales training classes for Xerox and, left and became a professional speaker on sales training. But my following books were on sales training because, again, I thought I was a good salesperson. But when I started teaching it, I had to really master the processes and the techniques because I was on display. Go ahead.
What's just great about that teaching as a pathway to writing is that you're constantly in dialogue with other people who are as interested as you are in the topic. So you're constantly reframing your message, responding to questions, understanding that they don't get this or they need more of that. And I did a lot of teaching doctoral classes. I created a class in public policy for the University of Maryland and taught it there while I was working on the book. So that was a really good regenerative kind of a process.
Yeah. Well, I got a great idea for you, Jane. I'm going to float it by you. And somebody helped me with this. For a while, it was always a pin, but now I got it clearer. What you said is absolutely true. The instinct sometimes when we're writing a book is not to tell anybody about it. Oh my goodness, then I'm going to have to do it. When logic states we should do the complete opposite. We should be telling people we're working on a book so we can enter into the dialogue. And I've always wanted to make a button that said, ask me about my book. So when I'm in the Safeway line or CVS, people ask, and we roll our eyes and think, I'm not going to get anything out of this conversation. And you'd be shocked what you can. But I have now cleaned it up because I had somebody explain to me, why don't we make a sticker for a laptop? And so when you open your laptop, you've got a little sticker that says, ask me about my book. Key being, I want to prompt people around me to ask me when I'm in manuscript development, which is opposite than the instinct.
Yeah. I was rereading the acknowledgments in my book this morning just to kind of think about it and get ready. And there is this long list of people that I interacted with. It was over a period of 4 years it took me to write the book. I started thinking, oh, I'll knock this out in a year. I know this with my eyes closed. Well, once you get deep in the weeds and wrestle with what you want to say, it comes out differently. But the dialogues I would have with my personal trainer,
Yeah.
with my next door neighbors, with family, with friends, people who weren't in the world of policymaking, but they would listen and ask questions. And well, why are you going to talk about this or what about that? And I found that so powerful. In addition to the students, my experience is that you often get stuck. It's like, do I really want to go there? I don't know. And so just talking about it, it really helped me a lot to be able to move forward.
Yeah. Now I'm going to dive into how you wrote that book, but I just got to ask one more question. I love the idea of dialogue. And I've got an opinion here. Don't worry. I'm not going to leave you out on your own here. We're going to
I
share
don't doubt
opinions.
that, Rob.
I'm just making you go. You don't doubt that. Oh, you have been listening to the show. Okay. Well, so I'm going second. But how do you is there a strategy in this very polarized environment now to actually have a dialogue with somebody who disagrees with your particular opinion? Any strategies for that? I'm all ears.
That is a great question. I think first you have to decide you want to do it. There are some people who just don't, who on the right and the left, who have just written the other side off. I do not believe in that. I believe that people are people. They have their beliefs and ideas for a range of reasons, and that's okay. So personally, I seek out people I think probably won't agree with me. I had a guy come over here to work on something on my house. And I thought, wonder what his politics are. So I bring it up. I say, are you a Trump supporter? And he might say, yeah, and I ask questions and listen. So my strategy is to seek people out, to ask questions and to listen. And the questions I might ask, if they say something like, oh, immigrants are ruining the country, I might say, well, where do you get that idea? Or, in what way? So you just really kind of go deep with them. And then you might get to a point where you might say, well, I have a really different opinion about that. And this is why. And then, they could say, well, I don't agree with you, and say, okay. I once sat next to a guy on a plane who looked to me like a very conservative, I'm pretty liberal, but looked like a very conservative button-up kind of guy. So I began a conversation with him. And they've always been civil. Do I change anybody's mind? That's not my goal.
Right.
My goal is to understand.
Right.
And I think that by being open and available to that, maybe people do think twice when they leave a conversation and hear a different point of view. I don't know. But I think it's so important to keep that door open and to actively pursue these conversations. Yeah. I have family members with political views that are totally opposite of mine. There's some people I can't do that with. It's just it doesn't go anywhere, and I know it won't. So I use some discretion in sort of who I'm going to talk to about it.
Right.
But that's
Right.
that's my approach.
Yeah, first of all, you nailed it. I mean, it's weird when we say ask questions and listen, people want to roll their eyes. But I've got a career of almost 40 years on the road where I actually used to bring out tape recorders. Now we just use smartphones, but I'm recording people that are going it's selling, because they're going to ask all these questions and listen. Only I disguise it and tell them I'm just looking at your style and set them up. And nobody asks questions and listen. It's one of these unconscious, incompetent moves. They don't know that they don't know. So we've all
Yes.
learned it and we hear it, but we forget it. The only thing I'd add to what you said, because I have to take it to a higher degree with me, my job is to change minds professionally, not politically, but I've been pushed by my publicist editor. How would you do this politically? The only answer I have, besides I'm asking questions and listen, is I think, Jane, you and I have to have a responsibility that if we're going to approach that neighbor, and the intent is, I want to see if I can not only understand, but maybe change their mind, I have to be willing to change my mind. And I think that's where we go wrong. We go in going, I'm going to change Jane's mind. What about you? Oh, no, no, no. I'm staying right where I am. Well, then don't have the conversation.
Right.
Or as you say, just seek to understand.
Yeah.
But
You
we
know,
have to be willing. Yeah.
yeah. One thing I would add to that, Rob, is that in the policy world, sort of unlike the world that you're living in,
Right.
the strategies for changing policy are available. Like I might talk to this person and really disagree, but on the other side, I'm engaged in my policy and advocacy work.
Right.
I am talking to my representatives and senators about what I believe. I am working with like-minded people and organizations to put forward policies and to go and lobby for them. So it sort of occurs on a one-to-one personal level, which I really believe in, but also it occurs on that policymaking level where we are really engaged as citizens of a democracy in the dialogue of policy. And that's gotten harder these days. There's no question about it. When I worked on Capitol Hill, our marching orders were go out there, fight like hell for what you believe in, but then you compromise.
Right.
Because if you don't get a result, you have wasted your time.
Right.
Whereas now it's more like, well, if you compromise, you failed. And
Right.
that is a very unfortunate ethic that I hope will change over time because we get the kind of stalemate that we have now. And I don't think it serves anyone, frankly.
No. No.
Another thing I just want to emphasize that I like to say to people, to constituents, which we all are, is that we are the boss. We are the employer of elected officials. We hire them and we fire them. And that's called voting. And I urge people to approach their members with that mentality. They work for me. And whether they agree with you or not, they do represent you. And I have really never encountered a member who didn't want to know what was going on in their district.
Right.
Like what's the teacher shortage in Montgomery County? Facts like that, they want to know. Now, they might not agree with what we should do about it, but there's something to be said for being eyes and ears on the ground and informing policymakers. So I'm digressing a bit, but
No, you're doing fine. And I'm going to move. Folks, I'm going to move her into the writing process, but I really wanted to get into this conversation. And I'm going to leave you with one last thought as we move into your journey of writing. I know you said this book found you. You're done. I didn't want to write a book. Nobody get away from me with the book. It grabbed you and wouldn't let go. But I think you have a second book in you. And I think the title is something around, look, Jane almost fell out of her chair. The title is something around They Work for Me. I think that's very powerful, Jane. I could hear it in your voice and tone, and the words are powerful. And I think we've forgotten that. So I'm going to give you a little nudge, but I'm going to tell you that might just start burrowing in. I'll leave you alone on that, though. And let's get into your writing policy. All right, a policy process. When this book grabbed you, did you have an end in mind? In other words, I know you were following a program. I know I was following my program. I didn't exactly know how to land a ship, but I knew I was taking the ship out. How about you?
yeah, it was really clear to me. Once I came up with those 4 Ps, which came out, and that was like a gift from the universe. I didn't sit down and try to figure out. I knew that the last chapter was going to be advocacy. Like, how do you put these 4 Ps together to make a difference? So I had my 5 chapters. I knew where I was going. Now, the really big challenge for me was what to include and what to leave out. Now, this is a huge topic. People
Right.
spend their careers in public policy, there's a literature, there's a scholarship, there's professors of public policy. And how much do you include? How much do you leave out? That was really the challenge for me, Rob, rather than where was I going with it, because I wanted to bring an intersection to the scholarship and the literature and the very practical reality. And all the reviewers, of which there were many that looked at this book, who were mostly academics, professors, et cetera, said there's no book that does that. It's either very theoretical or here's your checklist, very practical.
Right.
So finding that right balance was always the challenge for me.
Right. Did you start with a fully flushed out outline for the book?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I started it. I submitted it to the publisher. It got reviewed 2 different times, et cetera, et cetera. And, I tweaked it and changed it a little, but that 5 chapters, and that really never changed.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't get a whole lot of nonfiction writers on my show. And the fiction writers all pretty much just sort of let it flow. And there may be a loose agenda. Every time I meet a nonfiction writer, a business writer, it's like, oh, no, it expanded and contracted, it changed. But, oh, no, I had a full outline going before.
Very interesting, Rob. Sort of a nonfiction approach and a fiction approach.
Right. Well, I think the fiction approach, you almost want it to take you on this journey.
Yes.
We nonfiction people go, oh, no, I'm going to give you the 4 Ps.
Yeah.
But that's our journey.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. Did you have a daily writing routine?
Yes, I wrote every morning to the extent that I could. I was still working part-time when I was doing this. And so to the extent that I could, I would write in the morning. I have this counter in the kitchen that would be filled with books. And particularly when I got to the process part of the book, which was the most challenging, the most arcane. The rules and processes on Capitol Hill change all the time. They're different in the House, they're different in the Senate, and they're pretty boring. And it's kind of, there's a lot of, well, oh God, it's so arcane, who cares? Well, you have to care because they can do you in if you don't understand them. But having done this work for so long, I thought I was pretty proficient in this, but oh no, I ended up reading 5 or 6 books on congressional procedure. And what I would do is I would set up my stack of books on the topic, whatever it was, and I would stand there and I would read and take notes. So that every time I'd finish a book, I would have a set of notes that I thought were relevant to my book. And then I would go on to the next one. And when I kind of got my notes organized, I would start to write. And that really was my process. And then I did a lot of shuffling around. I would write sections. I would think, well, this belongs in politics, not in people, or this belongs in policy, not in process. Right? So there was a lot of that sort of revising that went on later on. But yeah, I found, just like in writing my dissertation, I needed a schedule. And even if I sat there and looked out the window and didn't do anything, I was on schedule because I just really had to discipline myself. This was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was just going to whip it out.
Right.
And so there were times where I was like, oh my God, am I really doing this? And that's where I think the discipline helps.
Yeah. I think that's a key word. And I love that you said that, because I'm always hoping that when we have these conversations, we've got an audience that are thinking about writing books. And not everybody writes them differently, but you and I really are lined up even on that, which is, this is my time to write. I'm not waiting for my head to say, oh, I really want to write now. I have great things to say. No, you have an outline. There are a lot of fun things you might want to be doing right now, but even if you need to look out the window, get your hands on the keyboard and start writing. And it's amazing because a lot of times, for me at least, when I thought wasn't really as inspired, I found a sort of a different speed, a different element to my writing. When I knew exactly what I wanted to say, it was good, but I'm not so sure it was as creative. So I guess what I'm saying is, ironically, the times we think we don't have as much to say might be the best times to be writing.
If I could just add something to that, I found that this process is almost kind of mystical in a way, because it takes you over. Yeah. And 2 examples of that, I would often get stuck on something and I wouldn't know how to resolve it. And I learned that this expression, sleep on it, really works.
Right.
Like I would say, all right, I'm just going to set it aside. I would wake up in the morning and I would have an idea about
Mm.
what to do. And that kind of astounded me. And the other thing is there were times I would sit at the keyboard and struggle, but other times I would just sit down and it would just flow.
Mm.
And when I finished, I would read it and I would think, who wrote this? This is really good.
Right.
And then, of course, there are other times I would read it and I think, oh my God, this is terrible. This really needs work. But it almost felt like I was channeling something. I hope that doesn't sound too weird, but
No.
it was a wonderful experience in that way. And I think it's what creativity is. That would be my experience of how I would describe creativity, that it comes through you somehow.
Yeah. But you have to sit there, even if you're looking out the window, and let it and welcome it. You
Be
can't wait for
available
it to
to it.
tap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I think
right.
a lot of people are waiting for it to tap them on their shoulder and go, it's creative time. Go find a place. It just doesn't work that way. I want to double back on something. You mentioned policy changes and things. It's challenging for us nonfiction writers. I know that, for instance, when I first was writing about presentations, I was writing about which side to stand on the overhead projector and how to keep the sheet of paper from blowing off from the fan that was blowing, which was wonderful in 1993. Okay. But as the book, it really showed some age to the book. I had a publisher that allowed me multiple editions. So but I kept cleaning up those technical areas till I straddled it and just talked about generalizations about what we were trying to do visually. How about you? How do you write something, as you said, where policy might change before we even got the manuscript done?
Boy, amen. What a good question. And I worried about that. And I went back and wrote something in the beginning of the book in the foreword about members of Congress, members of the House are elected every 2 years. That means the majority party can change. That means the chair of committees can change. That means the rules can change every 2 years. And then, of course, in the Senate, it's every 6 years. And then with the president, it's every 4 years. So it's a constant circle of things, and that's particularly important in the people side of things, because if you're working on a issue related to finance, you want to know who's chair of the finance committee, and that's going to change, and it matters. If it's the Republicans in charge, the Republicans will be a chair. For the Democrats in charge, be a Democrat, that kind of thing. So I did struggle with that, and I have gone back and looked at the book several times since we've entered this new era in the last 6 months, and I feel like it holds, that the basic tenets hold. And the details do certainly change. But I think these notions of developing a relationship with your representatives, doing your homework to know who's on your side, who's on the other side, figuring out your message and your language about how to communicate might be different with a Republican office and a Democratic office. All of that holds.
Right.
It's more challenging now because the environment it's more difficult to get your voice heard. But to me, that's an invitation. We got to do more. Align yourself with others and get together and do it as a group. If we are silent, we are really giving up our incredible opportunity and responsibility as citizens of a democratic society. And that is just not an option, to be silent. That's my feeling.
Yeah. Well, then what about the potential for now don't fall out of your chair again. All right. A, a second edition. Okay. Where you might be able to just touch. That's what second and third editions are. It's not that authors are being lazy. It's that 80% of our manuscript is holding, but there's been some changes. For instance, even me. Okay. Well, if we're going to be speaking, giving workshops, how does it change virtually? Well, that just came upon us. So, what about you possibly with another addition to the book where we don't necessarily clear out something that's been antiquated, but you add something that part of the conversation we're having right now as an example?
Yeah. I don't know, Rob. I would have to think about it.
Just need a chapter or two. Okay.
Okay, maybe an article, something like that. I don't know. I really actually am doing some memoir writing now, which I'm
Uh-huh.
really enjoying. I'm writing these micro memoirs, and I kind of want to explore other kinds of writing, actually, I'll leave the door open. Maybe we write it together, Rob.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll be your agent. Because I really think, it doesn't happen all the time. I've gone to some of my publishers and said, "Hey, can we do another edition of this one?" They went, "No, we can't." It's nice because you get a new cover, you get a new launch, you get to not only put in that chapter or two, but just airbrush and tidy up things that, not that you said that were done incorrectly, but now might have a different tone to them. So
Mhm.
it's really a nice experience. So we'll think about it. Maybe we'll take that one off the air.
All
Okay.
right. All
All right.
right.
All right. Let's go into, we're coming down the home stretch, but let's just talk about how involved or not involved you were in the marketing and promotion of your book. Okay.
Yeah, I think my experience is a little bit different. I was pursued to write this book. A colleague who I'd known for some time had a relationship with the publisher, Roman and Littlefield, which this is an academic publisher at academic side of their press. And he approached me because they were looking for a policy book for this series they were doing.
Mhm.
And it was, again, one of those things from the universe. It's like I was thinking about this at the same time he approached me. So I was just incredibly fortunate. And I went through the process of writing the outline, submitting to the publisher, back and forth, all that kind of stuff. And it just all unfolded from there. I really was not involved in the marketing. I really had plans and wanted to be. It came out sort of during COVID. It came out in 2023, even though copyright's 2024. I don't know how that happened, but that's fine.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. And I had some health challenges, and I just actually did no marketing. The only real marketing I did was internally to the colleges and universities that I had relationships with. And I said that anyone who adopts this book for a class, I will speak to their class on Zoom. And I've done a lot of that, and that's been really fun. I really enjoyed that. A doctoral student used this structure to write their dissertation. And, that to me is terrific. I'd say I've really fallen down on the marketing side. I don't think the publisher did much to market it, frankly. They really kind of leave it up to you and tell me when you have events scheduled, and we'll send you some books and stuff like that. So I have not I don't know. I haven't done it, Rob, and
Yep.
I should, but
Well, you're queuing me up, Jane. Okay. So this service announcement is brought to you by Rob and Jane. So two thoughts. First of all, just everyone remember, I don't care who your publisher is. And I work with some big ones. It's almost always up to the author, unless your name is Stephen King or John Grisham or some of the very big business authors, Daniel Pink. So, one, we have to do it ourselves. But two, and this is important for you, as opposed to in the early 90s when I first started in all this, where you really had to hit this window and that was it. It's not that way anymore. It's evergreen. So although you may have slipped a little and fallen, that book you can still get out there and do. And I like what you're doing, talking to the classes. Okay. But there's some other things that you can do to just promote that book. Maybe even, do you have a blog?
no.
Does this book have a website?
Well, I have a website, and the book is featured on my website.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm going to twist your arm a little bit off the air as well to get you blogging or something, because you can start talking about the book, or if you blog at the bottom of the blog, you can write, by the way, and do what you're doing. Get on podcasts, start having conversations, but the window isn't closed. It's still open.
Oh, thank
And
you for
yeah,
that.
you
Yeah.
didn't miss it. Back in the day, you missed it, but not anymore. And if you go to a second edition, but anyway, folks. All right, last question
Rob,
for
I
you.
think you should be my agent. That's what I think. I need somebody to motivate me and
Yeah,
push me. And
your accountability partner.
there you go.
Yeah. All right, last question for you. Again, we've got people looking at thinking about writing. It's a dream that many have. I always say that whatever the dream you may have, I think it's better than that. It's really a wonderful experience, and they can't take that book away from you, Jane.
It
So,
is.
so what advice would you give to an aspiring writer who's just on that line, and maybe a book has found them, but they just don't have that discipline, or they fear they won't finish this
Mhm.
project?
Well, I think the first thing you really said is that make sure the topic captivates you. Make sure you're captivated by even if it's fiction, by the idea, some sense of I want to write the story of XYZ or nonfiction or whatever. So give yourself a little time to let it marinate and be captivated by it. The second is create a circle of support. Have regular coffee with your neighbor to talk about your progress. Whoever your colleagues, if they're you're in the business world, I'm sure you are always talking to your colleagues and generating ideas. If it's teaching a class like I did, have some interaction and circle of support to keep yourself going. And third, and this is my experience, it's kind of like home remodeling. It's likely to take longer than you think it will.
Great example. Yeah.
I had thought it was going to take a year, but it took me 4 years. So, and that's okay. That's okay because it's a process and it will unfold as long as you are committed to, in my view, some sort of discipline around the process. And I know there are some writers who just, it flows whenever, and that's awesome. For me, I had to be disciplined to make sure that spigot was open.
Right. I love the contractor, or the example that you provided. Boy, did that hit home. I also, if I can add to it, I also think it's people go, well, at the time, and I don't know if I have the discipline. Many people work out. Many people go to that club and they take a class on Monday and they spend on Wednesday, and that's pretty precious to them. As a matter of fact, when they're out of town and they miss it, they'll make it up in certain ways. They have that discipline. I'm always encouraging people, apply that level of discipline. Look at it as you're working out 4 times a week.
That's a great analogy.
Right. Yeah. And life gets in the way, and sometimes you'll miss that Tuesday, but we'll make it up on Wednesday. But it's discipline. I'm with you on that one. How do people get a hold of you, Jane?
Well, I give you my email is janewestdc, as in District of Columbia, @gmail.com. My website is janewestconsulting.com. So there's a link there to send me an email too. So would love to hear from anyone. Anybody wants to have coffee, let me know. But that would be great.
Perfect. Well, and maybe a couple more universities will get a hold of you here too. I love going into universities as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're not, I come with a different level of energy that they're not quite accustomed to. Yes. So, and I know it. True. So I play it up even a little bit bigger, but that's just me. Listen, I want everybody to know, I saw Jane on a panel, and I saw a bunch of people on the panel, and Jane was the one I walked up to, and I said, I want you on this show. You were delightful. I really think you did a terrific job, and I'm just so pleased we were able to have this conversation. Thank you.
So am I, Rob. That was a great meeting, and I'm so appreciate the invitation here. And I hope there'll be more to come. So thank you very much.
You bet. Welcome to the Maryland Writers Association.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we'll do it again as well as we can next time. Until then, stay safe.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's guest author, we'd love you to rate, review, and share this episode with others. If you'd like more information on today's guest or the Maryland Writers Association, please visit our website at marylandwriters.org. You can also hear a brief history of the Maryland Writers Association by listening to Episode 0.